Hello YouTube, I am back at it with another Arcane build for you, with a minor in strength. It's no different than the last time I used the build. I might change up the inventory later. If you have any questions about the build, you can refer to that video, but everything should be on screen, more or less. The tune, the bop you are listening to is Clash on the Big Bridge by the Black Mages, which, for all intents and purposes, is a remix of Death Battle on the Big Bridge, I believe, which is Final Fantasy IV? I don't know, I didn't play that one. I really need to catch up on all those old RPGs, like the Final Fantasy series, and I just haven't. I've been bad. I did get to beat Chrono Trigger a little while ago, so that was neat, and I've been really appreciating the music, and it seems, to some extent, that the producers of that music, Square Enix, are much more lax with their YouTube copyright strikes. So you're going to have this nice little tune going in the background to serenade you while I ramble on. And it wouldn't be one of my videos if I didn't also include some bits for you to watch while I go on and on without recourse. Now, it's been a little tough getting back into Elden Ring. I feel like I say this to some extent every video, and I think I figured out why. If you've ever heard of the Dunning-Kruger effect, it's a graph you can Google. It explains it much better than I will, but I will attempt to explain it to you anyways. So you have a y-axis and an x-axis, right? So the vertical y-axis is your confidence level, and then the horizontal x-axis is your knowledge base in any given subject, anything you're trying to get good at, practice, learn, etc. And so, with your first bit of information that you get, you just skyrocket until your enthusiasm and your confidence is really high up, the peak. You hit a peak, right? And then as your knowledge goes up a little more, it plummets, and you hit the valley of despair. Oh, did you see that? Oh, I love that parry. And watch this wake up. I've never done this before in my life. Crouch poke, sword dance. Oh, delicious. You deserved one of those treats. I thought I'd point it out. But anyways, the point, the Dunning-Kruger effect, is that just partway down the x-axis you hit this valley of despair where you have a good amount of knowledge, more than you did before, and it suddenly becomes daunting how much you realize that you don't have the skill or the chops for how much you know about the subject. This can happen in writing, in any sort of sport or talent, a musical instrument, playing a video game, for instance. And so I feel like I'm in that valley of despair a little bit, where I want to learn, I want to get better, of course, but I am also woefully aware of how inadequate I am. Now, do I expect to be a professional, top-tier Elden Ring gamer? No, not really. I just don't have the time to devote to it. I have a full-time job. That's par for the course. That is to be expected. It's natural. But if I could climb that slope, the next part of the Dunning-Kruger graph describes it as the slope of enlightenment. If I could get a third of the way, or at least halfway up that slope, and even if that's my peak, so to speak, I'll be pleased with myself. I want to become a reliable player. Not necessarily the best. I don't need to be the best. But if I could be the number 2 co-invader who is reliable and can hold their own, I'll be satisfied. Oh, look at this. This poor guy. He was wrong. He deserved to hit me with that finger mace. He really did. But something about the animation on the Reduvia's Ash of War created this sidestep effect. And I wanted to show it to you, so there it is. But yeah, I want to get partway up the slope of enlightenment, even if I never get to the top of the next crest, which is the plateau of sustainability, or whatever it's called. Basically where you have high knowledge and high confidence, and you're sailing. Well, neat. I don't think I'll get there, but that's okay. We're gonna have fun all the while, and that's the point. It's a video game. It's a luxury. You're supposed to have a good time. Sometimes you gotta work for it. Sometimes the game will challenge you, and that's okay too. And that's where the satisfaction comes from. You feel like you conquered something. Sometimes you start a spinning slash and a wizard blasts you with some magic, and so you bail because the big damage numbers are a little bit scary. Sometimes you do that in life. You bail. But not for long. You just need to get your footing, and then you get back into it, and you get a pretty sick double kill with spinning slash. And that is why we do what we do. That's why we challenge ourselves. That's why we push forward. Alright, empty feel-good platitudes aside, my lawyer has counseled me to inform you, dear beloved viewer, do not use a sick spinning slash to get a double kill in the real world. That is a felony. That will land you in prison for a very long time if they don't put you in the electric chair. The good news about ending up in prison on a charge like that is that the other inmates will think twice about trying to gank you in your cell. I should probably get on to the topic on hand and the reason I named the video. Bleed. It is the poor man's crits. And let me explain myself, because any of you who are halfway familiar with the franchise of Souls games are probably thinking, well, critical hit is any time you get a backstab, or a parry, riposte, front stab, or you posture break a boss, and then you get a special animation critical attack. Maybe even a plunging attack in older Souls games would have a special animation for that. You may call that a critical hit. And dear viewer, you would be absolutely correct. So for the sake of this conversation, I'm going to refer to bleed as the poor man's crits, as opposed to a regular critical hit. And why I say that is, when you're fighting people online, you have to deal with latency sometimes. Sometimes with latency, you get a ghost hit. On your screen, it looks like you should have hit somebody, and then instead, they dodge it, they negate the damage, they still get status buildup, but you see a little spray, usually of whatever your weapon is. So if it's an electric weapon, you'll see an electric zap. If it's a physical weapon, you'll probably see a little blood splatter or something like that. And it varies depending on your element or status. And so the poor man's crits, I call it that because it feels like a critical hit from other RPGs, where there's a % chance you'll get bonus damage. And sometimes bleed feels like that. Sometimes bleed feels like you're getting that hit, a hit actually connects, and when that hit connects, when the bleed meter fills up, boom, bonus damage. There's your poor man's critical hit. It's not a very deep or complex idea, but I feel it's pretty fitting, especially for an average, a casual like myself. Sometimes timing your attacks to hit is difficult, especially if latency is involved. And so a bleed build feels like a critical build, where you're just hitting, you're swinging. Sometimes the bleed proc goes off in the middle of their roll, they get no damage, your progress on that bleed status is reset, etc. And then you do get it, and wow, it feels like a crit. It's kind of neat, kind of nice. I rather enjoy this Arcane build. It's, I think, my favorite iteration of the Arcane build. You get a lot of neat options. I like the strength weapons, of course. You throw a bleed infusion on it. If you have a weapon that's not really strength-centric, when you blood infuse it, you have enough Arcane that if it is a weapon that already has bleed on it, you can just do the occult infusion, and you will be plenty happy with that. Sorry, my train of thought. This invasion, it just loses the plot. The train of thought has been derailed. I don't know what's going on. You don't know what's going on. We're just kind of bullying these bizarre naked green men who seem to want to trick us off the cliff and knock us off, but we've already knocked off one of them, and now we want to knock him off the cliff. We won't be satisfied with a regular kill. We gotta get it done right. If they want to knock us off the cliff, they're going off the cliff instead. And I really appreciate the other invader also wearing the Albinuric mask. It cracks me up. I mean, the character is Alby, Cousin Alby. That is his real name. We're gonna stick with that story for now. Back to my most recent point, I like this build. I like strength builds, and so having an iteration of a bleed build that is a strength build, tasty, lots of fun. You have access to so many neat weapons. I like the blood-infused greatsword, the colossal one. I don't know why, it makes me smile. It's very silly when you get a 2-hit string on somebody and it bleeds them and the damage is big. Very fun. Greatsword, also a fun pick. Soft swap Reduvia for my chase downs and the occasional fling of blood. It's very good. And of course with this stat spread, you can of course use the Nagakiba if you're interested. You can use the Mogwin Sacred Spear. There's lots of options. This stat spread is almost a quality Arcane build, or an Arcane quality build. Mostly Arcane, really. And I am still amazed from time to time to see how far status has come. It really is a cornerstone of Elden Ring's gameplay loop. You can't really ignore it. It's there, it's potent, it's better than it's ever been across the whole franchise. Status build-up, weapons, and spells were kinda pitiful in Dark Souls 3. And I really don't remember them. They existed in Dark Souls 1, but they weren't on the map. I felt like they had slightly more of a presence for me in Dark Souls 3 because I was a part of that PvP scene for the latter end of that game's lifespan before Elden Ring came out. And then suddenly Elden Ring happens. Arcane or something, Arcane or Bleed was bugged for a little bit at the start. But once they got that figured out and patched away, it's just so potent, so strong, you'll surprise people. I'll chase somebody down and slap them with a dagger while they're trying to escape, and oops, the dagger did 450 damage because the little running attack it happened to hit at the same time the bleed proc went off. Sometimes you'll get a normal standard critical hit that has the animation, not a poor man's crit, and then the bleed will happen during that animation, and it'll be phenomenal. Look at this poor guy. R2 and spinning slash, 1400-ish damage. He's gone already in a flash. It's so deadly. And I know that if you can make your hits a standard physical build, strength or dex, will do great if you can land those hits all the time. And so it's like, well, you lose damage when you pick a bleed build, and hopefully you make it up with the bleed proc. And so that's a hard balance for me. I never know if it's exactly worth it, but I do like being able to use the other specialty weapons like the Monwyn Sacred Spear, so it's probably worth it. Oh, to context this invasion, I smacked the other guy while he was hiding. Both the host and his phantom were hiding. They were playing prop hunt, and me and this red were running around for probably 2 minutes before I finally found one of them. And so this is us celebrating, shaking our Nagakibas at each other. He swaps to the Albinauric mask, and we are brothers for but a moment. Earlier in the video, I mentioned the Dunning-Kruger graph that's supposed to talk about your peak of enthusiasm, your valley of despair, the slope of enlightenment, and the plateau of sustainability. These really hoity-toity terms for you know not enough to understand how ignorant you are, you know enough to know how inadequate you are, and then the growth and sustainability from there. And during these invasions, it didn't feel so good, I'll admit. I had some fun, right? But I was kind of down on myself. I was looking at the clips, and I was going, ugh, I'm no good. I'm og rotten. I'm terrible. And then today, I'm looking over the clips. I want to put together a video for y'all to enjoy, and they were better than I thought they were. So maybe I am partway up on that slope of enlightenment. I just need to not be so hard on myself while I am learning. As a hobbyist, of course. But while it's important to offer ourselves some grace while we are learning and improving and striving to better ourselves in whatever corner of life you see fit, don't delude yourself. Try to have an honest measure of yourself. Understand that, oh, those roll catches. I've never done dagger roll catches in my life. I've never thought to have a dagger soft swap for finishing people off. I'm starting to like it. I've talked about it a little bit in my last video, I believe. Having some sort of lightweight soft swap for when you need a different weapon quick. Don't get me wrong, I like hard swaps. I still think they're superior in a lot of ways, but the soft swap to a knife, I like it. I'm gonna start using it more. It's useful. I like the utility. But grace for grace, be kind to yourself, don't delude yourself. That's the takeaway. I couldn't help it. I returned to those platitudes. It feels like I should leave you with something a little more than just the barbarity, the violence, the light roller who's trying to escape my Stormblade clean rod sword. Light thrusting swords feel a little dirty from time to time, especially if you're bullying new or just inadequate noob players, not trying to be derogatory, that's just where they are. But light rollers kind of have it coming. They kind of deserve it a little, and that's okay. And I love this. This guy's got 2 ultra great swords. Gee, Bill, 2 ultra great swords? That's alright. We have a braggart sword. R2 into R1. He gone. Delicious. Oh, that invasion was so clean. And I just like it so much, because these last few invasions, I really started to understand the build a little more. I was starting to succeed a little more. It's consistency, really. Just playing the game often, paying attention to what you're doing, and trying to adapt, overcome, learn, all those things. Very vital. That consistency is so important. The Rust builds so quickly in any sort of player versus player environment. I felt it for a good while, a good bit back. I was trying to do competitive Apex Legends, which is kind of the last FPS I took seriously in some capacity, very early on in the game's lifespan. And I remembered if I skipped playing the game for a day or two, or maybe even 3, just because of life and responsibilities, in more important things than video games, I would just accumulate Rust so fast, and the game was so brutal to people who just didn't have the time or resources to play every single day for hours on end. And it felt bad, because of course I wanted to get good. I liked the premise. I loved Titanfall 2. Still do. Still really sad about what happened with Apex Legends. I feel like it kind of kicked any chance of getting a Titanfall 3 in the head and into a bucket off a cliff. But that's neither here nor there. Now, you want to know something that's really easy to digest? A quick tip for you and your Elden Ring experience? Don't try to trade with somebody who's casting Giant's Flame Take Thee like that guy was earlier. Maybe it was the shotgun variant. That's just a bunch of fireballs in a spread. Either way, don't try to trade with those. That is a horrible idea. The fact that I got out of it not being more damaged was a miracle in of itself. Great swords are powerful. Don't monkey mash at a hit stun. Be better than I am. Don't trade with stupid things. The power of the great sword will ultimately only get you so far, and any player with his head screwed on tight using a meta setup will likely squash you with whiff punishes. And that hit right there from that Ruin's greatsword. Its name escaped me for a moment. That phantom range. Ooh. Nothing worse than learning there's phantom range for when you want to play a spacing game. My goodness. Look at that red. I think he locked onto me. That running attack, he turned towards me at the end there. Look at that. Freezing pot to stop the cast as opposed to trading with it. Mwah. Perfect. That's exactly what you want. My goodness, has it been 18.5 minutes already? We have only one more invasion for you, dear viewer, and I hope you like it. This is the one I ended on, actually, for that play session, and I was having the darndest time trying to hit these fellows with the great bow as they approached me. They were obvious gankers to me. I roll early, get punished by a carry and piercer, really chunks my health. But that guy's stats, I think, are spread a little too thin. He can't have all that intelligence and all that strength unless he's drastically over-leveled. And I don't remember what level he was, actually. Scratch that, I just checked. He was about level 149, level 150, so maybe he's just really good at putting his stats together. I don't know. Then again, he's wearing a lightweight setup, so he made some cuts somewhere. Well, you'll find this from time to time. Sometimes you just gotta dodge all the spells over and over until you find an opening. It's tough. It's not glamorous, but it's a job that has to be done. And occasionally you'll be rewarded. You'll be reminded, oh yeah, flubbed backstabs. You could get a real backstab. Oh, he had only 900 health? That's where he skipped out. Remember that fella earlier who had 2 whole colossal swords? Remember what happened to him? That was a type. That was a foreshadowing of something to come. Very ham-fisted foreshadowing, but foreshadowing nonetheless, because sometimes you get the R2 and the R1, and then the glorious perfect roll catch, and that's where we end the video. The other red sits down. The job is already done. See you later.